Next, we have Paula Stevens. Now, Paula's a Gold Star mom and an author. After her oldest of 4 sons passed away unexpectedly while home on leave from the Army, she began a journey of grieving, healing, and guiding others forward. Paula serves as a chaplain at our local county jail where she works with female inmates and also volunteers for hospice. The common theme to all of her work is a desire to take compassionate action, increase resilience, and empower people to positively integrate all the experiences of their lives. An outdoor enthusiast, she lives in Colorado with her husband, a law enforcement officer. Thanks, Paula.
Okay, so I know that I assume that when many of you saw this topic about how to make meaning from loss, you probably thought that I would come up here and talk to you about the 5 stages of grief and what that looks like, and to kind of just hold your hand along that way. But I think that a more useful conversation might be to show you, or to sort of help illustrate for you how our lives are continually unfolding in loss. And that although we think of loss as this one big thing that happens, or it happens because someone we love died, our lives are really a string of losses that are put together. And like you've heard many times today, the theme is, it might not be the first or the second experience, or we could say loss, or we could say trauma, but somewhere along the line, it comes to be more than we can bear. And that's the breaking point. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that, and I want to talk to you about the good qualities that we have that brings us to this work. And I'm talking about all of you, not just us, the speakers, but I'm saying each and every one of you possess a certain core values or qualities that brought you to this place, right, to make the decision to serve, and how those are very beneficial and of tremendous value and benefit in the world. But there's also a place where what I say, we fall off the edge. But let me back up and speak a little bit more about my experience and why I get the privilege of standing up here and talking to everyone. So my son Brandon was 21 years old and had come home for leave, and it'll be 9 years next Thursday, and so this is real-time grief for you, okay? So I'm not going to hide this from you. I'm not going to say it's gotten easier. It's just gotten different. But the real time is, for me in October, this is hard. It's hard for me to stand up here in October. It's much different other months out of the year. Because in the back of my mind, when I look out and I see all of you in uniform, I see the last time I saw my son. So I see him walking away from me and me saying, "Have a great night," and him saying, "I love you, Mom." And so it's been 9 years, and I still have a tremendous amount of emotion around this experience. And I want you to remember that when you have experiences that come up for you 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years later, and you're thinking, but I should be over this. Why am I not over this? Because these experiences live in our bodies. And the more we try and suppress it, the more we try and get over it, the harder they are to get over, honestly. Yeah, after my son died, it was really the darkest days of my life. And I will tell you that I wish I could say that that was the one and only bad thing that's ever happened to me. But I had a whole life of losses leading up to my son's death, and I honestly remember having the thought after Brandon died, well, this is bullshit, because I've already paid my dues. I've already gotten, the short straw, the bad ticket, like whatever, and I just felt like life was so unfair that, bad things should happen sort of equanimously to everyone. Why is it all happening to me? And that's what it felt like to me, was it's all happening to me. And I want to address something that Jeff said earlier around, because he pointed me out and said, this not walking alone, acknowledging someone's grief or experience or trauma, that how important it is to give voice to that when you're with someone. So I had the experience of, I had a really great friend who, after Brandon died, so she's been my running partner for 18 years, and I had to quit running this year, so it was really, there's a grief, right? There's a loss right there, like I had to give up running, and I should be in a recovery program for that. But my really great friend every Saturday would call and say, we're going running. And this was after Brandon died, and I hated her for that. I hated that she would call. I would hate that she would show up even if I said no, but she did. And so she showed up on a Saturday morning, and this was about 6 months, maybe 6-8 months after Brandon died. And we met in the parking lot of our favorite place to go run, which is this, I live in Colorado, and it's this beautiful canyon. It's called Waterton Canyon. And we see bighorn sheep, and there's a river that runs down the side. It's a beautiful place to be. It's very therapeutic. And so she's one of my people. She's my person. And we're about halfway up this trail, and we run into someone else that I knew from the running community. So my community, my people were a lot of runners. And I run into this other person who I had not seen since Brandon died. And she looked me square in the eyes, and I could see that she did not know what to say to me. And I could see that she was incredibly uncomfortable. And she turned around and didn't even address me. She said nothing. And she had a conversation with my friend, and I just remember how hurtful it was that someone that I knew, someone that knew my son, couldn't even say, I don't know what to say. In the I don't know, is validation enough. And so when you see that person that has experienced something that you know, right? They lost their dog. Okay, I know that, and we're talking about big traumas today, but I want to talk about loss in the entire spectrum. When someone says, my dog died last week, that might be the 5th or 6th thing that puts them over the edge. And to look at them and say, oh, shit, I'm so sorry. Tell me about your dog. What was your dog's name? Or, I'm so sorry, I don't know what to say, but that sounds like it really is awful for you. It's that simple. We're not trying to solve people's problems. We're not trying to fix people, okay? We don't need that. What we need are people that come to us and just see us. That's all we need, okay? So that's kind of my backstory. But I also want to say in that running story, there was those two roles, right? The person who showed up consistently for me, always, always, always. I just saw her this week. Like, we still see each other on a regular basis. And the person that held like no value in my healing process, right? So which one of those people do you want to be, right? Yeah, so, okay, so I want to read this because I think it's a really valuable, it's a poem, it's a prayer actually. And it may sound a little bit morbid, but I think that there's a lot of reality in this. And so for those of you who maybe can't see it fully, it says, I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to have ill health. There is no escaping ill health. I am of the nature to die. There is no escaping death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. My actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. My actions are the ground upon which I stand. Okay? So this idea that loss is just one big thing, it's the death of a loved one, that's true, but we also lose our health. So the only reason that you are here and that you can hear me and see me is because those are faculties that you have not lost yet. And I know some of you young people are like, but I'll never have that happen to me. Well, if you're lucky, but I think it will, right? So for me, right, one of the things I lost in the last year was the ability to be a runner, okay? Everything I have, there's no escaping ill health. There's no escaping the injuries that got me to no longer be able to run. Yeah, okay? And the actions upon which I stand. How important is it that the one thing that we can hold on to, the one thing we don't lose, is our ability to act, our ability to make a choice, our ability to choose the impact of the friend who showed up versus the impact of my friend who couldn't show up for me, right? There's always a choice, and it's in that choice becomes the action. So with this making meaning of loss, I want to sort of look at the two subject-object. I want to talk about making meaning, and I want to talk about loss, because I think both of those are really important. So I have said that although we identify loss as grief and the death of a loved one, if we start to expand that vision and we start to see that actually we lose things all the time, but it's the meaning that those things that we lose have to them that makes it a big loss or a small loss or a significant loss or an insignificant loss. But we really do lose everything. But the important things, right, are the ones that cause us to suffer. The important things are the ones that cause us to suffer. So let me give you an example. How many of you as a kid lost, your goldfish died, okay? Or some version of that, the parakeet, the goldfish, the small animal, the pet, right? Okay, so we all had that, right? And how traumatic was that as a small child to have that goldfish die? Some of you probably cried yourself to sleep, okay? And so when we look at loss, we shouldn't scale that loss. We shouldn't rate it and scale it, because someone else's, you're losing your mother or me losing my son, okay, that's a big deal for me. But if you say to me, I lost my dog died, it's not my job to say, really? Well, my son's dead. Okay, you can get a new dog, right? This isn't what we're doing. We're not trying to scale and rate and berate, but we're trying to understand that I know the feeling of loss, right? And so someone says, my mom died last week, and you had no idea, and you go, oh man, well, I don't know what to say to that. I haven't lost my mom. I don't know what to say. You do know what to say because you too have experienced loss. All you have to do is tap into the goldfish experience, right? And say, oh man, I remember how sad I was when I lost the goldfish. We all have a place of mutual coming together that we can appreciate someone else's experience. We don't have to have their experience to appreciate it or to put value on that. So when my friend says, I lost my dog, I may in the back of my mind think, are you kidding me? But in real life, what I'm thinking is, this person is suffering. She has lost something of tremendous value to her, right? So we lose everything. And it's in that scale of understanding that my worst loss and your worst loss might look a lot different, but we have to pull them into the collective experience of what it feels like to lose, okay? Something that you love. So I want to talk about making meaning, because this is something that is, one, it's uniquely human. We are the only animal species that seeks out meaning. Making meaning is one of the most important things that we do. It is individual to each one of us. How we define our lives in terms of what gives our lives meaning and purpose is very individual. What I tap into to make my life feel meaningful and purposeful is totally different than somebody else's, or maybe just slightly different, but it is uniquely human. Okay? And then when we have a sense of meaning, when we have a sense of purpose, it gives us things like increase in hope, okay? Because we have something that is purposeful, something that provides meaning. It increases our hope. It decreases depression. It increases self-esteem, emotional well-being, and a general overall sense of well-being, right? So when we talk about making meaning to loss, what we're saying is, how do we take that loss? Okay, and often what we lose are the things that have meaning. So how do we integrate and weave those together in a way that we are able to rewrite or give different language to what gives us meaning and purpose? So when we look at this, we look at when loss disrupts meaning. Okay, so just to sort of say again what I just said, this idea that when something is lost, it sometimes hits us at the point of where our lives have meaning. So in the example of myself, my son dying, part of my meaning, part of my purpose is feeling like a good mom, okay? Feeling like a mom, feeling like I've done a good job, right? That I'm there for my kids. And I will tell you that every day I struggle with, did I do something wrong as a parent? Did I contribute to this? How could I have done things different? I run tapes in my head that sound like, you know, there was that one time when he had, and this is a true story of a tape in my head, I'm not making these things up. I should have gone to that cross-country meet when he was in high school. I didn't go, and I wish I would have gone, because maybe things would be different, okay? It's how I'm trying to rewire and rework the meaning, okay? And it's an ongoing, ever-evolving process for me, and it will be for you as you explore these concepts as well. So this is where I want to talk about, remember at the very beginning I said, I want to talk about the really amazing qualities that everyone in here possesses, and these are qualities that brought you to this place. It brought you to the idea that you want to be of service to the country. It brought you to the idea that maybe you chose a particular career path. But these are 5 qualities, and so this information comes from a book written by Joan Halifax, and the name of the book is Standing at the Edge. And these 5 qualities are altruism, empathy, integrity, respect, and engagement. I'm going to walk over here so when I look at the screen, I actually talk into the microphone. That way you can hear me. It makes a huge difference. So altruism is this sense of unselfish, seamless action between self and other. So I think there's an element of altruism in order for you to feel like you need to be of service, right? So you feel like you are an altruistic person. You feel like there's something here that you have to offer. Empathy, I know that that's a real feel-good word, and it's like soft and gushy, and you're like, oh, I don't have any empathy. I'm too tough for that. You absolutely have empathy, or you wouldn't be doing what you do, okay? So empathy, the somatic emotional resonance with another. When you see one of your friends in distress, that sense of, ooh, it doesn't feel good to me either. That's empathy, okay? The quality of integrity. This is the context in which we live our lives. Yes, a pretty big quality, pretty important quality, to live in integrity. Integrity with your own morals and values, right? And maybe the morals and values of the organization in which you're involved. Respect, valuing ourselves, others, and our principles. So very important, right? So these are qualities and values that I think are probably pretty familiar to you. I'm not saying anything that is like, oh, I never thought of this. Like these are qualities, right, that you are familiar with as military people. And then engagement. So engagement is a wholehearted sense of meaning and purpose. So I can engage in that because I truly believe in that. It's part of my purpose, right? To be a soldier, to serve, to do what you do every day is engagement, okay? So these are 5 really important qualities. And so if we look at these, and I want to just take a quote from the book says, the 5 psychological experiences that epitomize our strength of character and where great potential resides, okay? So I would say on some level, if we had you scale these 5 qualities, you would be able to rate yourself. And I think most of us would rate pretty high in all 5 of these areas, simply because this is part of what makes people who want to be of service good at what they do. Okay, so we could do this same thing. So a lot of this work that Joan Halifax did came out of working in the medical industry, working with nurses and caregivers in that way. So these qualities are sort of the embodiment of people who decide to be caregivers, people who decide to be in some vocation, career, or role that is of the service, right? So being of service to others. But what happens when these 5 characteristics go over the edge? So this is where we're going to talk a little bit about, this is great. So you're like, yes, like I have amazing integrity. Integrity never faults me. If I just stay in integrity, everything will be fine. If I just stay with good morals and values, this very black and white thinking, like if I'm good, then I'm good, and if I have values, I'm good, and if I break over here, then I'm bad, very black and white thinking. But what happens with a lot of us who live in this zone of these 5 characteristics is that we go over the edge. And when we go over the edge, we can no longer be resilient, or we need resilience tools to bring us back from the edge. So the breakdown, okay, is when we go back to the 5 remembrances. This is the prayer that we said at the beginning. My actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. My actions are the ground upon which I stand. Okay? So what happens when our actions in those 5 areas go over the edge? And I know this is, who doesn't love another PowerPoint slide with words that you can't read? Sorry, but I'll read it to you. It's fine. You'll get the same essence if I read it to you. So when we talk about altruism, if we go over the edge, we talk about people becoming pathologically altruistic. I can save the world. It's okay. I can do it all. No, I don't need help. I got this, right? And I'm gonna sacrifice life and limb for someone else or something else, right? So pathological altruism goes beyond just this idea that I can make a difference in the world. It goes into something that is unhealthy. Look at the idea of empathy, right? So the somatic experience with another person, place, or thing, that resonance of what someone else is experiencing. Empathic distress is enmeshing ourselves with that other and not being able to pull back. So I see someone else's trauma, and because I haven't addressed or dealt with my own trauma, their trauma is either triggering to me, I can live vicariously through that trauma, my secondary trauma, and I cannot pull myself away. My ability to be empathic and compassionate goes down when I am in empathic distress. So when I can't separate my experience from yours, or your experience brings up my own, because as Molly said, we can only heal others to the degree that we've healed ourselves. Okay, this is a great example of that. And someone had asked the question, like, what does that exactly mean? It means this. It means that we can only help others along the path when we've done our own work. So I'm going to find myself in empathic distress, or we could also call it compassion fatigue. Okay, that's another word that you may hear. Okay, integrity. Moral suffering happens when we're being asked to make decisions, take action that are outside of what we consider integrity. Okay, so how we define integrity becomes moral distress, moral suffering, or moral apathy when we're being asked to take action that is outside what we believe is true and right. So I'll give you a healthcare example. Okay, this spring, so I was working at a level 1 trauma center, and we had a patient come in. He came in on the cardiac unit, and he became my patient in terms of, I was a chaplain to him. He was there for about 4 or 5 months. What made this individual unique is that he was incarcerated at the Supermax in Colorado. He has the distinguished title of being the longest held person in solitary confinement in U.S. history. He is also the reason that Supermax exists because of his actions in the Illinois prison. He killed some prison guards. He was also part of the Aryan Brotherhood. And I know some of you are like, I'm lighting you up. You're like, I hate this man. I totally hate this man. I get that, right? Okay, but that's the moral of the story is not that, okay? I want to put that sort of as your backdrop to understand that moral distress was happening in so many people's, in the sort of community that was surrounding him. The doctors were taking certain action in order to sustain life for this individual. And the nurses felt like, and this is nothing to, no one was acting in anything less than full compassion for this person, but there was a conflict between what the doctors felt was life-saving measures and what the nurses felt was compassionate care. So, and the doctors felt like saving his life and giving him more drugs and giving him another chance was compassionate care. The nurses felt like he was too far gone and he should be let go to die. In the time he was at the hospital, he coded 9 times and was brought back 9 times. Okay, and that's a lot, okay? But so that's an example of moral distress. So the nurses were being asked to take action for this patient because the doctors had ordered it, okay? So they were out of integrity. They had gone over the edge, right? Respect, so horizontal comes into disrespect. So when you're over the edge, when you find yourself sort of defaulting to being disrespectful, whether it's horizontal or vertical disrespect, so horizontal being to your peers, being disrespectful to your peers, or vertical up and down disrespect, it's probably a good sort of ping back to you that maybe you're not practicing resilience, or maybe you've tapped out of the tools that you have in order to come back to being in integrity, to having respect, okay? And then engagement is burnout, working in a toxic environment, so we can't engage anymore, we're completely burnt out. So those 5 aspects, and then what we call sort of that's the shadow side of these, right? So these 5 shadows of what happens when we're not being resilient. So if we're resilient, we can come back to these 5 states where we are, remember the statement is where great potential resides. If we can be here, great potential resides. If we come to this place of being over the edge, right, then we're needing some of those resilience tools, right? We've gone over the edge. So what I want to talk about is this fun little guy here. Did anybody ever have that toy when you were a kid, the one where you'd like punch and he, yeah, I know, right? And he falls down and he gets right back up, right? And the base of him is filled with water or something. But so I want to talk about this. So you have these 5 characteristics that probably resonate somewhat with some of you. And how do you come back when you've gone over the edge? And we've talked a lot about these resilience tools, and it really comes down to sort of, and reframing all of the Thrive method, or I'm sorry, the Thrive model, is to say that it comes down to really 3 things. We talk about the base. So if you look at my little punching bag there, guy, it's the base. Like what makes you strong, what gives you roots, what gets you down and helps you feel grounded. Okay, so when we look at resiliency tools, the base are things like self-care practices, physical and emotional and spiritual well-being. And I could go and I could fill up everything from the Thrive model into these 3 categories. But we have this base, right? So this foundation of what we can come back to. So no matter what happens, no matter how hard we're hit, okay, we bounce right back up. Okay, that's our base. So our people, our practices, and then who and what inspire us. So in order for this toy to work right, we have to inspire it. We have to inflate it. And so who and what are the things that inspire and inflate you? Who are the people, where are the places that inspire you? So if you can go out in nature, if you have a particular person who you can download with. So it's this idea that who lifts us up, what behaviors and activities help inflate us, right? So that we can bounce back. So the opposite of this, if you think about Christmas, when people put these things in their yard, I hate Christmas, so I never put anything in my yard. Just not kidding. But those, so they have like the little thing that inflates them, right? But it has to go all the time, okay? And we're a little bit like that, right? We need to have that air perpetually inflating us. So we can't just be like, check the box for resiliency this week, I'm done. Right? Nope, because it's like a gas tank, it goes down. So we have to find these things that inflate us on a consistent basis. It's not just to check the box and be done. And then boundaries. So with this guy, he's got boundaries, right? He's got his foundation and he's got what inflates him, but then he has really good boundaries, right? It's where he says these things are okay and these things are not okay, right? And so that's the things like morals and values and self-awareness, and am I safe, and am I supported? Okay, these are all part of being resilient, is having these things in your toolbox. But having them in your toolbox isn't the same as using them, right? So you can say, oh, I went to a resilience training, I'm good. Or you can say, I went to a resilience training, these are the things that work for me, and this is what I'm gonna tap into, right? So being able to utilize these tools is the more important part and the more important practice of what we're doing here. So self-awareness, being safe, feeling supported. And then I like to close with just this quote from Albert Einstein, which says there's 2 ways to live your life. One is though nothing is a miracle, and the other as if everything is a miracle. And I think if we recognize that we are going to lose everything, that everything that we have is impermanent, that everything that we have is temporary, we can either look at it as everything is then a miracle because we just simply haven't lost it yet. Or we can be like, meh, right, whatever. But really to embody how amazing life is in this moment. So the fact that you're taking in a breath, the fact that you didn't wake up sick this morning, that your car battery started, all of these things are miracles. And I know we like to think of the miracle of Jesus walking on water, but I also think there's the miracle of just the simplicity of life and this moment right here. There is nothing more important or more valuable than the moment that you're living because it is the only thing that is real. The past is gone, the future has yet to unfold, but here we are in this moment, right? And so whatever's unfolding in this moment has the most valuable, most potential for change, and can have the greatest impact on how the next moment unfolds. Right? Thank you.